FLOYD WALLACE arrested in Brazil following charges of abusing underage individuals. Will the YouTuber survive a possible sentence of 34 years in a Brazilian jail? FRAUDITOR troll and Denver Metro audits spar over Typo-gate as troll's attorney again failed to provide a defense for troll's wife, and DMA's attorney filed to hold her in default for a second time. Plus, Jose "CHILLE" DECASTRO can't stop losing. Emergency motion in California to quash warrants for his arrest in Oklahoma denied. Emergency motions to use alternative means to serve 2 Nevada judges denied. Will Jose ever find love, fame, fortune, or a simple win in the court system? I'm your humble newsreader, Pants. It's Christmas Eve, and I'm dreaming of you climbing down my chimney with a sack of sandwiches, cookies, sody pop, and fizzy drinks. Will you be my Mrs. Claus as we cuddle up and sit back to listen to tales of auditing insanity? Jose "CHILLE" DECASTRO confused fan and foe alike on Thursday with multiple federal court filings in the Central District of California that is seeking to block a warrant against the diminutive YouTuber out of Duncan, Oklahoma, and award him damages for what he is claiming to be First Amendment retaliation. DeCastro had visited Duncan earlier this year in support of Heather Dawn Chandler, a woman he claimed was being stalked and persecuted by members of the Duncan police force. His stay was loud and brief, with altercations outside of the homes of a police canine handler and in the police parking lot, before DeCastro left town. His reporting on Duncan diminished, and he seemed to have given up on Chandler's cause. DeCastro, in his declaration that accompanied the lawsuit, went into further detail about the parking lot incident. During my investigation at the Duncan Police Department's public parking lot on September 8, 2025, I observed unsecured AR-15 rifles plainly visible inside multiple patrol vehicles parked in areas accessible to the public. I documented these security failures through photographs and video recordings. As part of my security investigation, I tested whether vehicle doors were locked by attempting to open them. All vehicles were locked. I did not gain entry to any vehicle, did not touch any property inside any vehicle, and did not damage any vehicle. At all times, my actions were undertaken solely for journalistic and public safety purposes and not with any intent to steal, damage, or unlawfully access any vehicle or property. I then met with Major Woods, a Duncan Police Department supervisor, and professionally reported the unsecured firearms I had observed. Major Woods acknowledged that the department preferred officers to use AR-15 locks, but indicated that leaving firearms unsecured in locked vehicles was within department policy. At no point during or after that meeting did Major Woods state that my conduct was unlawful, improper, or subject to criminal investigation. Chandler would fire her attorney soon after meeting with DeCastro and apparently use various ChatGPT-inspired filings to attempt to advance her defense against criminal charges. DeCastro offers services to teach individuals how to use ChatGPT and other AI systems in their defense of criminal charges. She would later drop the use of AI and hire a new attorney to handle her defense. The YouTuber alleges that despite Detective Suzanne Smith writing up a probable cause report on the incident on September 9th, he was not charged with the crimes until December 10th. DeCastro says that the charges were delayed and ultimately filed as retaliation for his filing of a public records request in October for information about the unrelated arrest of Anthony Lee McAdams by Duncan police in June of 2024. The YouTuber has been charged with 3 counts of loiter in, injure, molest motor vehicle, joyride, a misdemeanor. If he is found guilty, each charge carries a punishment of up to 1 year in county jail and fines of up to $500. There is an active arrest warrant in place for his apprehension in Oklahoma. He is suing the city of Duncan, Duncan Police Chief Brian Attaway, Duncan City Attorney David Hammond, Detective Suzanne Smith, Officer William Fitzhugh, and Officer Connor Newman. In an unusual move, DeCastro has filed an emergency motion in the California federal court system to obtain a temporary restraining order to do the following in the Oklahoma case. 1. Temporarily stay and enjoin enforcement or execution of the arrest warrant issued against plaintiff based on Detective Suzanne Smith's September 9th, 2025 affidavit pending a hearing on preliminary injunction. 2. Enjoin defendants from arresting or detaining plaintiff based on his September 8th, 2025 constitutionally protected conduct. 3. Temporarily stay further prosecution activity in Oklahoma case number CM 2025-539, pending resolution of plaintiff's constitutional claims. DeCastro's accompanying lawsuit portrays the YouTuber as a world-renowned journalist whose livelihood is being threatened, as he is scared to travel due to the outstanding warrant for his arrest. He argues the merits of what he was charged with in Oklahoma and asks for the California federal court to drop the charges against him based on their interpretation of Oklahoma's laws. DeCastro further claims that all of his actions while in Duncan, including testing the door handles of police vehicles, which he freely admits to doing, are protected activity as he was in the process of investigating the Duncan Police Department. Besides the demands outlined in the restraining order, DeCastro is seeking 1. Declare defendants violated First and Fourth Amendments. 2. Declare information CM 2025-539 was initiated and maintained unconstitutionally. 3. Declare September 9th affidavit obtained through Frank's admissions. 4. Declare Lori Adams' notarization violated Oklahoma law, rendering affidavit defective. 5. Declare 3-month delay demonstrates retaliation and abuse of process. 6. Declare Duncan maintains unconstitutional customs of retaliating against those who investigate police. 7. Issue a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, staying and enjoining enforcement of the arrest warrant, prohibiting arrest, detention, or prosecution based on the September 8th conduct, staying prosecution of CM 2025-539 pending resolution, and enjoining retaliation for First Amendment activity. 8. Issue a permanent injunction making temporary relief permanent, requiring Duncan adopt policies protecting those who observe and photograph police, require training on illusory and First Amendment rights, require policies prohibiting retaliation against journalists filing FOIA requests, and requiring notary training on Oklahoma impartiality requirements. 9. Award compensatory damages for constitutional violations, ongoing prosecution, threat of imprisonment, emotional distress, reputational harm, restriction of liberty, chilling of speech, suppression of investigations, economic losses, defense expenses. 10. Award punitive damages against Smith, Newman, Fitzhugh, Hammond, and Attaway individually. 11. Award costs and attorney's fees under 42 U.S. Code Section 1988. 12. Award pre- and post-judgment interest. 13. Grant such other relief as the court deems just. DeCastro had not opened a new GoFundMe in order to fund his lawsuit as of press time. His 3 existing GoFundMe campaigns, including one he set up exclusively for Heather Dawn Chandler, saw no new donations for Friday. Jonathan Frauditor Troll Who Know won Friday's crowdsourcing title with $5 in recorded donations. No other campaigns that we follow received donations for the day. This is a breaking news story. The ongoing saga involving a motion to dismiss in the ongoing lawsuit between Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova and Jonathan Frauditor Troll Who Know may be coming to an end, as the judge in the case has announced she has canceled a motion hearing to hear the dismissal on Friday. Judge Virginia K. DeMarchi wrote, "On December 18, 2025, the parties jointly filed a stipulated request to appear remotely at the January 13, 2026 hearing on defendant's pending motion to dismiss. Having reviewed the moving and responding papers filed with respect to the motion, the court finds that the motion is suitable for determination without oral argument. Accordingly, the court vacates the January 13 hearing and will decide the motion on the papers. This order terminates docket number 50 as moot." The order is concerning, as the controversy regarding the motion to dismiss was raging all of last week and should be considered a bad sign for said motion to dismiss. Who Knows attorney, superstar Stephen Vondran, filed the motion to dismiss in November after being warned by Judge DeMarchi that she was in no mood for another motion to dismiss at the time, after his first attempt forgot to name Nika O'Leary, Who Knows' wife and the second defendant, in the case. This resulted in attorney that Randall S., the unhinged attorney Newman, Esquire, immediately filing to hold O'Leary in default, since Vondran didn't bother to name her in the motion to dismiss. There was some drama behind the scenes, and the motion for default was removed in exchange for Newman to file an amended complaint. The damage had been done to Vondren's then sterling reputation, and one expected what would come next. Vondren, for the second time, appeared quite oblivious to the fact that he provided a spirited, if flawed, motion to dismiss, and completely ignored O'Leary for the second time, along with new defendant who knows 1469363 Canada Incorporated. This time, Newman waited a couple of weeks, then filed both his response to the motion to dismiss and to hold O'Leary in default for a second time. The response from Huneau was outrage, blaming Newman for not telling Vondren that he forgot O'Leary for a second time before filing the default. Huneau said he would hold his attorney responsible for the error, but took little responsibility for approving the path forward that included the mistake for a second time. In those same 3 weeks, Huneau has also focused his public focus on a dubiously sourced video that supposedly has granted him the ability to use Cordova's works in perpetuity. He made no effort to authenticate the video. Without that authentication, he would be unable to use it in court for his motion to dismiss. Following Huneau's public outbursts, blaming Newman for Vondren's errors, Newman also made it clear that he would withdraw his default motion if Vondren would simply file a defense of O'Leary, something that would do more to help Huneau's case than hurt it. There's been back and forth between the sides, which seems to have ended when DeMarchi made her ruling on Friday. While technically both sides could file motions before her ruling, the fact that she canceled the hearing for the motion to dismiss and is willing to rule on what's in front of her seems to indicate that this motion is doomed. It is unlikely that DeMarchi will rule this week. Attorney Newman is scheduled to appear on ReallyCoolNews' Boxing Day livestream on Friday, December 26th. Huneau's ongoing efforts to raise money to help him defend himself from Cordova's lawsuit lost $1 on Friday due to a change in exchange rates between U.S. dollars and Canadian dollars. No gains were noticed for any campaigns that we follow on Sunday. Finally, his campaign saw no gains on Monday as the entire market was filled with goose eggs. A late-breaking update now. On Monday, both sides came together and filed a joint stipulation to set aside Newman's filing of default against O'Leary. In exchange for setting aside the default, Superstar Vondren will file a written defense for O'Leary in the next 14 days, should the court agree to the stipulation. Jose "CHILLE" DeCastro had another setback in court on Friday when Magistrate Judge Brenda Wexler ruled that he had not shown he had done enough to earn the ability to use alternative means to serve defendants in his lawsuit against Clark County, Nevada. DeCastro is suing nearly everyone involved in both his conviction for charges of interfering in a traffic stop and obstructing a police officer last year, and his later acquittal of the charges. Because he is suing everyone in their personal capacity and not official capacity, he has been unable to serve the defendants through usual methods. While defendant Brendan Bork may have been served, only Clark County and Clark County Deputy District Attorney Agnes Botello have officially accepted service, as they filed a motion to dismiss last week. DeCastro had previously filed for an emergency order to allow him to use alternative means to serve the defendants in the case, noting that his second extension to serve the defendants was coming to an end. Judge Wexler wrote, Rule 4 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure establishes the methods for service of civil complaints filed in federal court. Federal Rule 4E1 allows for service following the laws of the state in which the federal court is located. Under Nevada Rule of Civil Procedure 4.4b1, a plaintiff may serve a party through alternative means if the methods of service provided for in Rules 4.2, service within Nevada, 4.3, service outside Nevada, and 4.4a, statutory service, are impracticable. Under Rule 4.4b2, a motion seeking an order for alternative service must provide affidavits, declarations, or other evidence demonstrating 1. The due diligence that the plaintiff undertook to locate and serve defendant, and 2. The defendant's known or last known contact information, including address, phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts, or other information used to communicate with the defendant. The motion must also outline the proposed alternative service method and explain why it comports with due process. Under Nevada Rule of Civil Procedure 4.4b3, if the court orders alternative service, the plaintiff must also make reasonable efforts to provide additional notice under Rule 4.4d and mail a copy of the summons and complaint, as well as any other order authorizing the alternative service, to the defendant's last known address. Nevada Rule of Civil Procedure 4.4d provides that in addition to any other service method, the court may order a plaintiff to make reasonable efforts to provide additional notice of the commencement of the action by other methods like certified mail, telephone, voice message, email, social media, or any other method of communication. The alternative methods of service must comport with due process. Due process requires that a defendant in a civil action be given notice of the action that is reasonably calculated to apprise the defendant of the pendency of the action and afford the defendant an opportunity to present his or her objection. Plaintiff has not shown that service of process under Nevada Rule of Civil Procedure 4.2d is impracticable. Indeed, he has not even provided an argument that his prior attempts to serve these defendants complies with the appropriate subsection of that statute. As a result, this court will deny plaintiff's motion without prejudice, and will extend the deadline for service of process to allow plaintiff an opportunity to comply with the statute. All was not bad for DeCastro, as in the same order denying his request for alternative service, the judge granted him an extension to serve the remaining defendants until February 2nd, 2026. DeCastro himself has live-streamed twice since the ruling, indicating that he would be spending most of the weekend preparing his opposition to Deputy District Attorney Botello and Clark County's motion to dismiss, which he claimed was due on Monday. Friday's broadcast also featured an extensive fundraising session for another case where DeCastro is suing in a federal district court in California to block a warrant for his arrest in Oklahoma. The diminutive YouTuber took time to play the incident where he claimed he saw what he claimed to be unsecured AR-15 long rifles and attempted to access the interior of the vehicles by pulling on the door handles of each vehicle. He then claimed that his status as a First Amendment auditor gave him special privileges where attempting to gain access to police vehicles was now legal, as it was part of his duties as an auditor. He later reported his own actions to police, who confirmed that the long rifles were properly stored as long as the vehicles were locked. DeCastro also launched into an attack on notary Lori Adams, who notarized the warrant for his arrest. He said that she was biased, as she was recorded asking DeCastro's associates, Heather Chandler and the YouTuber known as Wild Journey Nation, to move away from her personal vehicle when they were filming in the parking lot. Adams had no interaction with DeCastro in the incident, though DeCastro now claims her interaction with the women somehow disqualifies her from performing her duties, as the women were known associates of DeCastro. DeCastro pulled in several $1,000s on his Friday live stream, which he said would cover his filing of the lawsuit in California and the service of all the officers involved in the incident. Despite telling his fans that Oklahoma would not be attempting to extradite him for the misdemeanor warrant, DeCastro played up the possibility of extradition, at one point adding that it would likely be that California Governor Gavin Newsom would intervene, as his name, Jose Maria DeCastro, sounded like an illegal alien, and Newsom would prevent the unlawful extradition of such individuals. The YouTuber is facing an uphill battle with his attempt to have California overturn the actions of another state. Due to state sovereignty issues, limited federal jurisdiction, and the younger abstention, it is almost impossible to have one state successfully block the actions of another state. DeCastro is claiming that his First Amendment rights were violated, as he was only indicted for the charges after he had filed for information on another unrelated case. While his filing shows no real connection between the decision to charge him with the crimes and his investigation into another matter, he made it clear on his Friday and Saturday live streams that he would be pursuing the issue if the lawsuit moves forward. The YouTuber is expected to live stream again on Monday, following his latest filings in the Clark County lawsuit. According to published reports on g1.globo.com, YouTuber and self-proclaimed sex tourist FLOYD WALLACE Jr. was arrested on Monday in the Liberdade neighborhood of Sao Paulo under suspicion of coordinating the transportation of minors to meet with foreigners. According to the article, an investigation began after app drivers reported strange rides where a foreign man requested transportation for children and teenagers in ride-sharing vehicles without showing up at the pickup location. Wallace is alleged to have coordinated the trips, provided validation codes, instructed the drivers, and picked the destinations. The drivers reported that the minors were being taken to meet older men who did not speak Portuguese. According to the article, police investigators said the trips revealed a pattern of trips concentrated in specific areas of Rio de Janeiro and areas near hotels and properties used as temporary accommodations. A video accompanies the article, featuring police knocking on a hotel door and arresting a large black man who could not be clearly identified as Wallace. The man immediately fell to the ground as the door was opened, and his face was obscured by police before the video cut off. Google's AI overview indicates that typical sentencing for foreigners convicted of sex trafficking range between 4 to 8 years of imprisonment plus a fine. Aggravated factors can lead to increased penalties. The G1.globo.com article goes on to indicate what longtime followers of our coverage of Wallace had already known, that he had given up on the premise of finding a wife overseas and had told his fans that he was now only interested in sex with women in poorer countries. For years, Wallace promoted a lifestyle on his live streams that openly involved the promotion and usage of fake social media profiles, fake identities, and the use of multiple hotel rooms in order to protect himself from being taken advantage of by local women. His alias of Terry White was infamous, as he would film himself cold approaching young women and girls on the streets of countries he was visiting. Viewers noted that more often than not, Wallace, as White, would approach younger women who did not appear to be of legal age in the United States. Wallace, who refused to learn Spanish or Portuguese while traveling in South American countries, billed his channel as an example of how a man who was unsuccessful with women in the United States could fulfill his sexual fantasies outside of the country. Originally billed as News Now Omaha, Wallace racked up a criminal record in more than 13 states with charges including disorderly conduct, assaulting a police officer, and resisting arrest. He was briefly engaged in a partnership with Jose "CHILLE" DeCastro in 2023, where DeCastro was allegedly serving as his legal representative as he attempted to sue the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. Wallace was billed as a national treasure and would perform First Amendment audits in Texas and Oklahoma on behalf of DeCastro. Their partnership dissolved in the summer of 2023 after Heather Dollarhide, wife of DeCastro associate Jason Dollarhide, publicly accused Wallace of sexual assault. The accusations were followed by allegations that DeCastro paid off Dollarhide to prevent her from reporting Wallace's activities to the police. DeCastro's and Wallace's friendship and DeCastro's alleged legal representation of Wallace dissolved soon after the incident. In early 2025, Wallace did time in Oklahoma for charges stemming from a 2023 charge of obstructing an officer in Cleveland County, Oklahoma. This was followed by a saga where Wallace was reportedly moving from Texas to Nebraska and needed help fixing his car. He vanished for several months before turning up in Colombia, after claiming that he left the United States after discovering that he may be the father of a baby that was set to be born in August. Wallace primarily stayed in Colombia for the latter half of 2025, then moved his activities to Brazil after he reportedly cracked several ribs in a motorcycle accident. He claimed he traveled to Brazil for free health care provided to foreigners. He would then disappear for several weeks, only to recently reappear in live streams claiming that he would be returning to the United States after the first of the year. In his most recent live stream, Wallace claimed that the woman who accused him of being her baby's father was now in custody in the United States and had lost the child to Children's Protective Services. He pondered taking a DNA test and renaming the child Floyd Wallace III, and mockingly stated his plans to take the baby with him on his sex tourism outings. This is a breaking news story. Tuesday afternoon, Judge Virginia K. DeMarchi ruled on an ongoing dispute in the ongoing case of Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova v. Jonathan Frauditor Troll Who Know, that apparently put to rest the so-called typo controversy. Judge DeMarchi wrote, on December 15, 2025, Plaintiff Christopher J. Cordova filed a motion for entry of default by the clerk against defendant Nika O'Leary. On December 22nd, the parties jointly filed a stipulation to set aside entry of default. No default has been entered by the clerk. The court construes the parties' stipulated request as an indication that they agree plaintiff's motion for entry of default should be withdrawn. The court deems the motion for entry of default withdrawn. Defendant Ms. O'Leary shall file an answer to the first amended complaint by January 6th. This order terminates docket numbers 47 and 52. It is so ordered. The controversy stems from the filing of a motion to dismiss by Who Knows attorney, superstar Steve Vondran, that excluded a defense of Who Knows' wife, Nika O'Leary. The document used singular descriptions to the defense of Who Know and not O'Leary. No mention was made of O'Leary, and she was omitted from the title of the document. It was the second time Vondran failed to include a defense of O'Leary, as earlier in the year Vondran filed a motion to dismiss that was followed by a motion to hold O'Leary in default for Vondran's lack of defense of the defendant. Who Know was aware of the filing and would later argue that his wife, despite not being mentioned in either motion to dismiss, had a legal defense and was implied to be included in the motion to dismiss. The first motion to dismiss was withdrawn, along with Newman's motion to hold O'Leary in default, in exchange for granting the ability to Newman to file an amended complaint naming Who Knows 1469363 Canada Incorporated as a defendant in the lawsuit without protest from Vondran. Newman's second attempt to hold O'Leary in default came with an offering from Newman to immediately withdraw the default request should Vondran file an actual defense of O'Leary. On Monday, Vondran agreed to the stipulation, and both sides filed a motion where they would agree to withdraw the dismissal in exchange for Vondran filing a defense of O'Leary. Soon after the filing, Who Know released a scathing statement dismissing the agreement, which was filed on his behalf. In the statement, Who Know accused Newman of being responsible for the stress that caused a personal tragedy for O'Leary and Who Know's family. In response to Who Know's accusations and statements, Newman released a video statement explaining that Who Know was in error for suggesting that the omission of his wife's legal defense from either motion to dismiss was a simple typo. Newman's statement brought about a series of comments by Vondran, posted in response to the video, threatening to bring their disputes public. Vondran seemed unaware of the video attack that was earlier posted by Who Know, and would later apparently be blocked by Newman from further interactions on his YouTube channel. Vondran's second significant error in the lawsuit and his strange use of oversized rubber hands in videos on his own YouTube channel have brought comparisons to the character of Jack Kelly on the popular Hulu sitcom It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The character is a failed lawyer who wears oversized rubber hands to hide his obsession with his naturally small hands. He is the biological uncle of the character Charlie Kelly and is known for mangling the law in cases that he is involved with. With two significant errors and a client who is ignoring his advice to post a tax on agreements he stipulated to, Vondran is running dangerously close to having the association with the fictional character stick, and permanently losing control of his ability to defend his client. Vondran has until January 6th to provide a defense for O'Hury. Neither default had been processed by the court clerk before being withdrawn by Newman. Judge DeMarchi has already canceled next month's scheduled hearing on the motion to dismiss and has indicated that she is prepared to rule on the filings before her. Who knows? Help us fight this anti-free speech retaliation lawsuit GoFundMe campaign made $14 in new donations following his video release on Monday. No other campaigns that we follow received donations for Tuesday. YouTuber Jose Chili DeCastro suffered another legal defeat on Monday when his motion to have multiple warrants for his arrest in Oklahoma, quashed by a federal district court in California, was denied by the court. DeCastro sued the town of Duncan, Oklahoma, in the Central District of California last week, claiming that the warrant for his arrest for molesting a police vehicle was retaliation for his later attempt to file a Freedom of Information request in an unrelated case. Included with the lawsuit was an application for a temporary restraining order blocking Oklahoma from carrying out the warrants that accompanied the charges DeCastro is facing in Oklahoma. DeCastro essentially asked the California federal court to intervene in state-level charges in Oklahoma. Normally, such an act is prevented by U.S. legal doctrine known as the Younger abstention, which prevents federal courts from interfering with pending state court cases. Furthermore, Articles 4 and 6 of the United States Constitution prevent states from invalidating each other's laws. Instead, disputes between the states are handled by the United States Supreme Court. On Monday, United States District Judge Stanley Blumenfeld Jr. ruled against DeCastro's motion shortly before the diminutive YouTuber went on the air to solicit money from his fans in a vigorous defense of his motion to have the charges dismissed. DeCastro ignored notices in his side chat, including one from ReallyCoolNews' owner and operator Jim Finch, indicating that Judge Blumenfeld had ruled against DeCastro. DeCastro ignored offers to have the ruling emailed directly to him and spent most of his live stream explaining how his motion was rock solid and predicting that it would be granted by the court. It is unclear if DeCastro is aware of the ruling at press time. Judge Blumenfeld wrote, "Plaintiff filed this civil rights lawsuit in the Central District of California against the city of Duncan, several Duncan police officers, and the Duncan city attorney challenging his arrest and prosecution. He also filed an emergency motion for temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, seeking to enjoin enforcement of the arrest warrant and further prosecution activity. The motion is procedurally and substantively deficient. Procedurally, plaintiff does not state that he has served or attempted to serve any defendant with the application, nor does he make any showing why notice should not be required. See Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 65B1. The court may issue a temporary restraining order without written or oral notice to the adverse party or its attorney only if the movant's attorney certifies in writing any efforts made to give notice and the reasons why it should not be required. Moreover, plaintiff traveled to Oklahoma to conduct business investigating a local business department in that state. He has now sued numerous defendants in their individual and official capacities without showing that there is personal jurisdiction to proceed against them in California or that venue is appropriate here. Substantively, plaintiff fails to demonstrate a likelihood of success or even a serious question on the merits. Under Younger v. Harris, federal courts generally abstain from enjoining state prosecutions under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983. Citing Younger and reiterating long-standing public policy against federal court interference with state court proceedings, Younger created a limited exception for bad faith prosecutions. In the Younger abstention context, bad faith generally means that a prosecution has been brought without a reasonable expectation of obtaining a valid conviction. Here, plaintiff acknowledges that his Section 1983 claims challenging his arrest and prosecution satisfy the Younger requirements for abstention, but argues that the bad faith exemption applies. His bad faith claim, however, is largely conclusory and based on the same claims underlying his First and Fourth Amendment challenges. The Ninth Circuit has emphasized that the Younger exception is narrow and should not be read so broadly as to swallow the rule. A core premise of Younger, we must remember, is that defenses to the state court action, including constitutional defenses, may be raised in state court. Applying this principle, the Ninth Circuit concluded that the bad faith exception does not apply merely because a plaintiff argues that the state enforcement action is weak, meritless, or even unconstitutional. This is all plaintiff does here. Thus, his claims are barred by Younger. Accordingly, the application for a temporary restraining order and the alternative request for an immediate hearing on his motion for a preliminary injunction are denied. Plaintiff is ordered by December 30th to file either a status report indicating whether he intends to prosecute this civil lawsuit in light of this ruling, and if so, the status of his service of the summons and complaint on each defendant, or a notice of dismissal if he intends to dismiss. Failure to timely comply may result in dismissal. The ruling comes as DeCastro's second legal setback in under a week. On Friday, a Nevada court ruled against his emergency motion to be allowed to use alternative means of service to serve the defendants in his lawsuit against Clark County, Nevada, and nearly everyone connected to both his conviction of and acquittal from charges in the state in 2024. DeCastro now has a deadline of December 30th in the California case to either file a status report indicating if he's still going to pursue the case in light of the ruling against him, and update the court on the status of serving the defendants in the case, or issue a notice of dismissal. The YouTuber is expected to live stream again Tuesday night. YouTuber FLOYD WALLACE Jr.'s Monday arrest has sent shockwaves throughout both the First Amendment auditing and the Passport Bro communities on Tuesday, as the scale and scope of his alleged activities and the length of prison time he is allegedly facing has become clear. Wallace, 30, was arrested in the Liberdale neighborhood of Sao Paulo, Brazil, on Monday, with a widely distributed video showing the YouTuber being pepper sprayed by police as soon as he responded to the door of his hotel. The YouTuber offered no resistance and fell to the ground when police entered the room, briefly obscuring his face as police attempted to explain the charges. Wallace was later seen being placed into the storage area of a police SUV and then escorted into a police building for arraignment. Wallace was apparently caught up in a crackdown on foreigners coming to the country to have sexual relations with children. Despite local laws allowing the age of consent in the country to be as low as 14, legally, the national age of consent does not apply to foreigners. The age of consent for foreign travelers reflects the national age of consent in their home countries. In Wallace's case, the age of consent in Brazil is 18, which reflects the federal age of consent in the United States. According to published reports, Wallace has been charged with rape of a vulnerable person and facilitating child sexual exploitation, which carry a combined maximum sentence of 34 years in prison. His arrest was helped by an Uber driver who reported Wallace, using the alias Terry William, had requested a ride for two underage girls in the Jacare neighborhood in the north zone of Rio on December 8th. The girls told the driver that they were being taken to meet an older foreign man who did not speak Portuguese. When they were unable to explain who the man was or where they were going, the driver contacted Uber support and registered the incident as a hazardous situation. According to reporting by G1.globo.com, Uber launched an internal investigation into Wallace's activities and found that he had created multiple accounts with fictitious names or those of third parties. It also revealed that he had a pattern of ride requests for children and teenagers in different areas of Rio. On December 12th, Wallace went live on his foreign-only YouTube channel to address fans after being absent from streaming for several weeks. In that live stream, Wallace refused to turn on his video feed and said that he would not be sharing video of his exploits until he returned to America. Wallace seemed to be aware of crackdowns on foreigners in the country. He said that he had planned on traveling to one more city before ending the year with a return to the United States. At that time, he mockingly said that he intended to take a DNA test to prove the parentage of a child that he had been accused of fathering. Wallace had left the United States in August to avoid such a test. Wallace claimed he was now willing to take the test as the baby's mother allegedly had the child taken away from her, and he could live off welfare benefits and tax breaks for having custody of the child. That was Wallace's last live stream on the foreign-only YouTube channel. A second incident was noted by Uber on December 18th as a ride was requested by the same profile to transport 4 underage girls from the Rocha neighborhood to Santo Cristo. Uber worked with U.S. Homeland Security investigators to identify Terry William as Floyd L. Wallace Jr. soon after that. Again, according to G1.globo.com's reporting, investigators found that Wallace had moved to Sao Paulo with indications that he would be leaving the country. Rio de Janeiro civil police asked for and were granted a temporary arrest warrant, search and seizure warrant, data breach warrant, and passport retention warrant from the court, and Wallace was arrested on Monday. Various published and video reports indicate that Wallace was part of some sort of international gang that provided underage girls to foreigners. None of the reports elaborate on this enterprise, nor do they identify anyone with connections to Wallace. Reports that hard drives seized at the scene of the arrest contained videos of Wallace engaging in sexual activities with children under the age of 6 could not be confirmed as of press time. Wallace himself had spent most of the last 2 years floating between trips to South American countries and having incidents with police in Texas and Oklahoma. Wallace spent time in county jail in Oklahoma earlier this year after completing probation in Texas for a reported traffic incident that escalated into an incident with police. Over the past year, Wallace had complained that his YouTube income had declined significantly as his multiple YouTube channels were bleeding viewers. After a series of controversial loans from viewers that Wallace either refused to pay back or took a great deal of time paying back, most of his regular viewers declined to support his activities. Wallace often blamed undisclosed mental conditions for his lack of social skills and would often stop live streaming for months at a time, returning to the practice after blaming his mental illness. The YouTuber claimed at one point that he was receiving financial assistance for his mental illness from the United States government, but those benefits were cut off when he started to make too much money from his YouTube channels. When his YouTube fortunes declined, he said he was battling to have his benefits restored. Reports that his benefits were restored and that he had recently received an $18,000 payment from the United States government circulated on Tuesday after his arrest, but could not be independently confirmed as of press time. In recent months, Wallace had an adversarial connection to the few viewers he retained following the fallout from his various funding scandals. He would reciprocate their offers of super chats in exchange for Wallace performing humiliating activities by punishing his audience by turning off his live feed or charging his audience to perform simple acts of hygiene, taking a shower off camera, changing his clothing, brushing his teeth, etc., when they began to complain about his appearance. Wallace also dropped his cover story that he was in South American countries to learn about the history and cultures of each country while he pursued finding a wife. On recent live streams, he made it clear that his only use for women was to have sex, and that a sex act was a requirement at the start of his dates before leaving his apartments. Wallace's negative opinion and actions towards women appeared to grow as he continued to struggle with financial problems and the lack of ability to obtain donations from his YouTube viewers. Reaction to Wallace's arrest has been mixed, with pro-passport bro lifestyle channels largely agreeing with the arrest but taking the arrest as a warning that even well-established YouTubers in the sex tourism industry can face repercussions for their actions should they engage in illegal activities. This is a continuing news story. We need your help. Both ReallyCoolSite.org's daily newspaper and our daily newscasts are funded by your continuing donations and what we make from our YouTube AdSense revenue each month. If you'd like to contribute to help us keep the lights on, eating, feeding the cats, defending ourselves from lawsuit threats, and writing news stories to feature on both the newspaper and newscast each day, you can do so via a donation to our PayPal, Cash App, or GoFundMe accounts. If you can't afford to contribute, please watch our videos from beginning to end, like, share, subscribe, and comment. You can help by doing next to nothing, and we thank you in advance for pitching in.